Actually, I don't know why you really want to hear a lecture, but I posted in my in the description ish of the page that, well, if I were a poet or read the last poem, drama. If I were a dancer, I would dance one last dance. But since masyado akong in-imbibe ang pagiging teacher, I'll deliver one last lecture. And just some context, because it will be a merger of three of my favorite classes when I was in Ateneo. One is Chem 151, which is Biochem. No. Yeah. Second is Theo 141. So if I mention Theo 141, it is actually the Theo that is liberation theology, meaning social change theology, right? Because I might use that phrase or that class code. It's Theo 141, meaning everything about God and social vision and social change. Third is Philo 103, which is philosophy of religion. And my favorite teacher was si Kalasan. So sobrang dami niyang mga tanong sa buhay. So patanong na rin ako. Di sige. So that's my disclaimer. If I mention these three courses, those are what it meant. And so it's a last lecture of sorts. And so it's a way for me to ask, if I ask myself, what could be the message of sorts that I could give to people who would, because I'm leaving, because I think you won't hear me for a while. Or you will see so many posts on Facebook. I entitled it, "You Are a Masterpiece, Go Live Like One." And I give an abstract because I feel like I'm a scientist, so I have an abstract. Did you read? Yeah. Anyway, the abstract is really just a summary of sorts. And I begin by asking you your reaction after I show you a couple of pictures. And the first is the Mount Pinatubo crater lake. Have you been here? Oh, that's sad. This is the first time. How many has been here? What was your reaction after that climb when you go up and you saw this lake? Wow. Ganda. That's Mount Pinatubo crater lake. This is the first time I think in my trek that I saw shit. Ganda. Listen, Coron. Actually, inigit ko lang kayo. Ito yung mga basic pinuntahan ko. Wow, galing. Ganda. Or sige, let's not go too far. Kasi, inigit ko yan. Or Manila Bay. Sunset. Anyone who has viewed Manila Bay during sunset? Or sunrise? Doesn't matter. Both. Galing, ganda. At ingitin ko kayo, ito yung school na pupuntahan ko.
It's all three.
This is the top view of the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Right? Anyway. Sige, that's it. So, this is an aerial view. They have a sky eye thing. You know what sky eye is, right? They have a similar thing, and they try to get an aerial view of the school. This is school. Literally, I didn't go down the hill. I went up another hill, and this time by the sea. And so it's prettier. And so, wow, galing. And I ask a similar question. When you see any your first reaction, which reaction best describes describes
Heart.
but really, the question that I always ask, and I hope one of the notes I gave every time you finish biochemistry with me, the first phrase is, you are a masterpiece, and you are beautiful inside. When I say you're beautiful inside, I'm not saying beautiful in character, okay? That's not the point. My point is to look inside and see the cellular processes and everything inside of you work, and it shall reveal your beauty. Now, I'll make a disclaimer. I told you already that it's a lecture. I cannot help myself but mention biochemical stuff. I'll try to tone it down a bit. I will explain. But the challenge is for me to convince you and for you to say to yourself, wow, galing. Wow, ganda ko pala. However, that's a statement sa akin. Our journey starts by looking inward. And I hope inside the cell, it reveals your beauty. And let's begin with one type of cell. Let's start with a muscle cell. And I want you to imagine, or you can do it right now. This is what happens. When you try to flex a muscle, a lot of processes are happening from the moment I told you to flex your muscle and the fact that you actually flexed it, so many things happen in between. When you heard me say that, your brain processes it and sends a signals to the neurons, sends neurotransmitters to your neurons from one to another until it reaches the muscle cell. And the muscle receives that signal and it opens its storage of calcium. The calcium ions get released and those calcium ions bind to a protein, a scaffold of sorts in the cell, and it lets another protein bind to it and say contract. And at the same time, your mitochondria, which I'm sure you're familiar with what this is, in high school biology you always say, it's the powerhouse of the cell. So the entire time it is making ATP for you to function. That happens a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. So walang lag. I will flex my muscle. That doesn't happen. So as you reflect on the speed of all these processes, I hope it starts to get into you that, wow, galing pala. Ang bilis naman nangyayari inside this. If it lags, I don't know what will happen. If it slows down, hindi siya nag-buffering. It just continues to move very fast. Let's continue talking about probability. Sorry, I just had to go down. And let's begin by talking about another set of stuff. Let's put the cell aside. And let's talk about the protein. Let's zoom in more. Talk about single protein, just one. And for the sake of setting the stage and setting the context of this, each protein is made up of amino acids. Each amino acid is coded from 3 nucleotides in the DNA. So, I want you to make a mental math, or just play numbers with me. How many 1,000 amino acid proteins can you make? Right? Let's do some math. Jurel. There are 20 possible amino acids. 1,000 amino acids, so that means 20 raised to 1,000. Right? That means 2 raised to 1,000 and 1,000 zeros after. Alright? Now, what's 2 raised to the 1,000? 2 raised to 1,000 is 2 to the 10 to the 10 to the 10. 2 to the 10 is 1,000. 24. Let's forget about 1,000. So 1,000 has 3 zeros. 2 to the 10 to the 10 has 3 times 10, 30 zeros. 2 to the 10 to the 10 to the 10, 300 zeros. That 300 zeros, after that 1,000 zeros, I do not know how to call that anymore. That is the number of possibilities of having 1,000 amino acid protein. And some proteins have way more than 1,000. Some proteins have double that, triple that, even 100 times that. The largest protein is a pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. 10 million grams per mole. If one amino acid is estimated to be 110 grams per mole, or 100 grams per mole, yeah, it's 10,000 amino acids times 10. And that, in that probability, we choose a single type, a single order for a specific protein. And there's just one protein. You have 25,000 proteins inside the cell. If you reflect on the probability, it's amazing. Let's combine the two. You know how fast this happens? To make this, well, you have to make a lot of DNA. And you can make DNA 50 nucleotides per second. How many letters? Let's play some mental game. 50 nucleotides per second. Let's say you have 1 second. How many, let's say, G can you say in 1 second? Kasi GC80 siya, diba? Kung G lang. 1 second, okay? Let's just count, okay? Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. 1, now let's stop. How many? 5, 6? You can make 50. Sinabi mo lang yon. Ito, chemical reactions happening. And if you took my biochemistry class, you know what exact process actually happens. When you connect one nucleotide, that happens 50 times. But wait, there's more. You're slow. The bacteria can do that for 1,000 times a second. So speed, probability. This is important because you can only pluck one, choose one of the many. Because things are exact. Let me draw to you one enzyme. And it's catalase. Bakit siya? Siya yung pinakamabilis na enzyme na alam ko. So di ko alam kung siya pa talaga yung pinakamabilis. Basta alam ko, siya yung pinakamabilis. This catalase, just for the sake of everyone, it breaks down H2O2. What's H2O2?
Hydrogen peroxide.
Alkoxylenate. And that's what you put in your wound to kill bacteria. And so if that thing is inside your cell, it will kill your cell. And so something must say, oh, don't kill the cell. Okay? It must very fast. And just for the heck of a reaction, it catalyzes this reaction. It does that way too many times. But before that, just to connect probability and speed, it selectively catalyzes H2O. Hindi niya pwede i-stop yung ibang bagay. Okay? Hindi niya pwede sirain yung ibang bagay. Laging H2O2 lang. Imagine sirain niya yung kailangan mo. Hindi pwede. Haghanap siya ng H2O2. Ay, H2O2, kill. H2O2, kill. Okay? That's what it's trying to do. And it's composed of 2,000 plus amino acids. It's a tetramer, 1 mer is 506, 2024. So, 2,000 plus amino acids. It works 40 million times a second. That reaction happens 40 million times a second. From the time I started until now, sabi ng laptop ko, ilang minutes na? Mga 14 minutes. Ilang H2O2 na kaya niyo mong break? There's kabilis. Yet, it is exact. And the probability of having that kind of configuration to make that happen should amaze you. But this is one enzyme. The beauty of all of these is there's so many of them. And sorry, this metabolism. Every dot is an enzyme. Every dash is a reaction. That exactness I described for one enzyme if it does not amaze you, then all of that happens, all of that is inside your cell. And it needs to be controlled. Can you imagine if you have so many ways in the streets, two-way streets and everything, na pwede sabay-sabay may mangyayari? Traffic, magbabanggaan, pero hindi siya nangyayari sa cell. Walang police. Kaya na sabi, ito, go. Ito, stop. No U-turn dyan. One way through. The level of control is amazing. So that you don't want one process that is, for example, related to storing fats happening when you're hungry. That is a disaster, right? But you don't want that to happen. So there's more levels of control that I will not explain already how. But it happens. And so just one pathway is amazing. The control of one pathway is amazing. One thing I want to highlight is the intricacy of the network of all of these. They are all inside the cell. You've done lab, right? You've done, kailan ba yung lab? Kahit anong lab? It tells you to mix stuff, right? Like add reagent A, then add reagent B, heat, weight, filter, and then add reagent C. Not happening in your cell. All of them are just there. Can you try like one organic experiment? Put all of them together. No. But every single process inside your cell, all the reagents are there. Sabay-sabay sila nandyan. So the intricate control of ikaw pwede, ikaw hindi. Ikaw, ito muna kunin mo. And the exact choice, even though probabilistically there's so many reagents available, do that at a remarkable speed. It's amazing. And if you're not convinced that it should be so, you have to be accurate. And I pause and I allow you, and I hope you take this with a grain of salt. That the easiest way for me to explain the importance of accuracy is through diseases. Diseases prove to us that the level of accuracy needed for cellular processes should be exact. You see genetic diseases happen. Just one main difference, change that, you see diseases. I discuss diseases in class precisely because it makes you convince yourself, kailangan talaga ganyan. Hindi pwedeng ganyan kasi ito yung mangyari. I'm not saying that the people who have genetic diseases exist so that you feel, oh, I'm so amazing. No, that's not what I meant. I hope it doesn't mean that they cannot reflect on the same things, okay? I'm just saying, it's there because, and there's so many ways to go wrong. And so there's so many diseases. So the choice of the intricacies, the choice of the control, that you choose this over that, despite the probability of doing anything else, is accurate. And that happens because of one thing. There's a logic behind all of those. What's the logic behind all of those? If you are my student, I always repeat this, whether in Chem, in biochem, in gen chem, it is intermediate. Thank you. But the only reason why all of these happen is because intermolecular forces. Because of H bonding, because of those dipole-dipole interactions, this enzyme can choose that over that. Because they are matched intermolecular physically speaking, they can move as fast as it could be. Because of some intermolecular forces, it can say stop. Do this, do not do this. All the speed, the probability, exactness, whatever, are all rooted in the fact that they have intermolecular forces guiding them. It's like the invisible hand moving in there and saying, this happened, this happened. And as you reflect on all of these, I hope. You are a master. That when you see the cell, galing. I am special. I am a masterpiece. But that shouldn't end there. Otherwise, it will be narcissistic. Okay, special. Yeah. And let that be a road as you continue to look inward. That it points outward. So when you look in, I hope it reflects something outward. So God that says, I can do this. I am powerful enough to make all these happen. I am all-knowing enough. He knows all the biochemistry he needs to know to make this all happen. When I open my biochem book, when I study, and to continue studying the specifics of all these processes, yun yung common reaction ko lang. Galing naman. Wow, how are these designed such at the very start, at the onset, when you could do anything from scratch? Say, gusto ko ganito. So, ganyan. Partida mas madali na yung nandyan na siya, aralin natin kung paano siya nangyari. Kunwari, wala yan lahat. At kailangan mo, ito yung requirements. Kailangan niya huminga, kailangan niya gumanto, ganun. Anong gagawin mo? From scratch. Imagine ko siya, sobrang hirap. Sobrang galing. But that doesn't end there. It'll be scary if you have a God that's so omnipotent, that's so omniscient, yet not love. Because, paano pag maging vengeful siya? How cute! Paano pag kaya gawa ng kahit ano, ang gusto niya gawin? But through that omniscience, through that omnipotence, He chose to love. He chose to be loving. And that's why this happened. And if I may suggest, if I may push the discussion forward, this knowledge moves us to response. If you are convinced that He is omniscient, omnipotent, and I hope that short reflection on what the biochemistry says is enough to prove to you that He is omniscient and omnipotent. It will move you to respond. Twofold. We'll talk about a personal response and a social response. The first is personal. And in the light of recent events, or recent years, it always breaks my heart when I hear a lot of people say, I'm worthless, I'm a failure, empty, things are not it's not making sense. Because seems like you remove the entire thing for now. There seems to be a chasm, there seems to be a separation of that idea, or shall I say, that truth that He's omnipotent, He's omniscient, He's loving, to your own life, to our own life. I hear that a lot. People say, well, I respect the neurochemical imbalance and that leads to that. I'm not invalidating your feelings. I'm not invalidating what you're saying, what you're feeling. But just the same, makes me think, nothing. If you just see all of these, the cards are laid out for you to say, wow, my sense though. Imagine you will spend so much energy, so much thinking into making what you are, and say, well, ito, for fun. Your masterpiece. wala lang, para show off. Nabuo siya. And I think there must be a way, or there must be a reason why this is such. And I borrow St. Augustine that says, it is a God-shaped vacuum in every man that only Christ can fill. That perhaps the emptiness, the walang sense ng mundo to, di ko nakikita kung bakit naging ganito, ay isang paghahanap, search for something missing. And if I may propose, borrowing St. Augustine, baka kasi plagiarism. But borrowing St. Augustine, sabi niya, there's a God-shaped vacuum that only Christ can fill. And, well, does it happen to me? Does that mean that you're immune if you just know all of these things? Of course not. It, I think, reminds me of a question that Philo 103. And I got you guys. Sabi niya, is God an ingredient or a condiment? Allow me to share my own journey in that line. Well, kasi I'm taking a PhD, so related. I started applying for a PhD 2014. The fact that I'm leaving just now means I had more than, 100 letters of rejection. And I just delete them in my email. Like 30 people just send messages after that. Parang baon siya. Eh hindi agad-agad mag-send ng email. Kasi may Facebook naman, may real-time DM, Snapchat, joke ka. And, well, a bit haphazard in searching for those programs before. But I got serious in looking for one. Because may video. Pero, we will not get tenured if you don't have a PhD. So, walang sense laging mag-part-time pagkatapos ng 3 years kasi hindi pwede mag-permanent. End of contractualization. But, so, kasi 2014, ako mag 3 years. So, 5 years na ako, 2016 na. Anyway, I had a certain, I got serious in actually wanting to get out of this Ateneo. I to get a PhD. 2015, I was applying. And I got into a program in Switzerland. It's my favorite country. I say, wow, chocolate, wow. And the scholarship was like 3,000 francs a month. Wow, pag-uwi ko, pwede mo na yung kotse. So, pera, check. Place, wonderful. Wala pang, shooting, requisite yan. Wala pang ganun lang time na yun. So, Europe was like, wow. Yeah. So, I want to be there. Like, visit Switzerland once for a program, and then like 1 week lang. So, I like the place. So, I got into the program. I had to apply for a scholarship. So, when I applied for a scholarship, it's a Swiss government scholarship. That year, January 2015 was lalabas yung results ng, kasi 2 levels siya. Local muna, they will choose finalists from the Philippines. Then the names will be sent to Switzerland for an international screening results. And January 2015, sobrang serious ko na kasi gusto ko matanggap ko yun. So, I prayed. Desperate times calls for desperate measures. And timing. In church, we have a fasting week. Oh, perfect. So, I'll fast for this specific purpose. 3rd day of fast, I received an email. Rejected. Malamang, nandun na ako pag natanggap ako. For reference, if you know Dr. Liwanag, that's exactly the same scholarship. Tanggap siya eh. Anyway, anyway, it made me question, it shook my understanding of, bakit? Ba't gano'n? Di ba? Nagsalo mo na ako, napakapit na ako. In that instant, when reflecting, maniwala reflecting ako. When I was reflecting, I can imagine, may video, pero don't, off the record na dapat, but I can imagine Sir Carlos standing in front of me. His stomach out, his left hand leaning on an invisible table sa kanyang left. Naging teacher na ba siya? And when he was a teacher, ganun kasi siya eh. Naglilinis siya sa imaginary table. Wala naman, table. Ano ganun pa rin? Tapos noon niya, tapos tinatanong niya, is God an ingredient or condiment? Begin to question things. Bakit nangyari ito? I learned an important lesson. And just for the sake of explaining this, he uses kare-kare, but I like to use chicken joy. What does that mean? If chicken joy was your life, kasi yun yung lunch ko kanina. It was your life. Is God the chicken or the gravy? Masarap naman siya pag may gravy. Mas masarap siya pag may gravy. May iba kasi niya ayaw kumain ng chicken pag walang gravy kasi bland na yun. Pero chicken joy pa rin siya kahit walang gravy. Kahit, kunwari lang, walang ketchup. Kunwari lang namin yung gravy lang. And it made me reflect. And I think I heard some of you say, long test question. Oo, long test question yan. At kailangan namin sagutin para atinista pa yan. Kaya kong ball. Kaya ingredient, di ba? Para cool yung sagot mo. Philosophy, religion, tapos yung God complete. So kailangan ingredient yung sagot mo pag feel of paper. Pero alam ko nung time na yun, even though I was there, praying, fasting, all that, but not getting what I wanted, I felt sad. I felt, syempre, like, everyone was leaving, everyone was getting accepted. I'm just... But I learned an important lesson. And I was forced to answer that question. And so then, I decided, okay, gets ko na. Kailangan ganito yung mangyari para maintindihan ko na nabubola lang ako, na nag-feel ako. Seryoso na to. Well, from that time on, I said, hindi niya pwede. Kailangan ingredient na siya. Kailangan totoong, ito makes sense. That you choose him as an ingredient in your life. If St. Augustine, balik mo na siya doon. May butas eh. May natanggal eh. Balik mo na siya doon. And if you feel like it's too serious, and that's what I felt, that's what I think, ba't gano'n? Well, for that chasm to be, to be closed, for the gap to be closed, it took a damn serious thought for that to happen. And so, that caused me to reflect, and that caused me to say, hindi, kailangan serious na rin to. From that time on, then I try to make things, to make room for work that will improve my faith, improve my relationship with Him. And so that is a challenge for you as well. That perhaps the gap, perhaps the feeling of emptiness, perhaps the feeling of bakit hindi ko mapagtagpi-tagpi ng mga nangyari sa buhay ko, ay dahil siyang nag-design ng whatever happened inside of you is not designing your life. It's so ironic. If we are convinced that He is omniscient, He is omnipotent, He is loving, but hindi natin siya hayaan na mag-take ng front seat. Take the wheel. And I guess after this, I hope that is what looking in would happen. See all the beauty inside of it. Will force you to look up and say, there is an omnipotent, omniscient, and loving God that calls for a response first to a relationship. And then what? That shouldn't end there as well. Kasi selfish yun. Hindi na yun. Ay? No. Or you don't suddenly Facebook post. Wow! I have hashtag blessed. Oh my God. Well, there's nothing wrong with saying that, but really, after seeing what's happening, you're so isolated with you, and so you feel like, oh, I'm so good. I hope it invites you to look around. The journey is inward, then upward, then around. That the world is broken. That there's poverty, there's terrorism, war happening, crime, whatever crime can think of is happening. Poverty in general, hunger and poverty in general. The world is broken. Unless you are so stuck in your bubble, you would see that the world is broken. The same chasm is true in the world around us. That mess, that emptiness feels, we cannot understand why it's like that. Versus the presence of an omniscient, omnipotent, and loving God is not matched as well in the world around us. It shouldn't stop with you and your God. Well, that's the first step. And I'll send you to a video.
You know, it's not hard to see that there's this great imbalance and that things aren't right. You know, I know that, but for me, I suppose it really hits home if I stop and think about this moment, because it's happening right now. In the same moment, you have, you know, a generation who are sitting around entertaining themselves watching reality television, which, to be honest, is anything but real, while you have a child who is being prostituted behind closed doors and robbed of their innocence. It's not fair that we can go about consuming every single material option that comes our way while, you know, the widow and orphan are stripped of life's basic dignities because they're victims of a conflict that simply isn't theirs. It's not fair that there's a generation who are choking on their obesity while at the same time there's 30,000 children who will die today for lack of food. It's not fair that we have no problem going about spending $3 or $4 on what is basically glorified tap water in a bottle with a fancy label, while you have entire communities who suffer at the hands of disease because the only water that they have access to is foul and polluted. It's not fair that we, you know, can sing and dance and jump around in our freedom and in our liberty, while at the same time the slave remains captive, out of sight and out of mind. It's not fair that we can sit and watch the evening news from the comfort of our living rooms and pity those who lived where the storm hit or where the ground shook or where the water rose, and simply feel sorry for them and then change the channel and get on with supper. Is it fair to walk past the homeless man and give him nothing in the assumption that he'll spend it on booze or cigarettes or or to suggest that he should go out and get a job. I mean, who are we to judge the alcoholic or the prostitute or the addict or the criminal as if we are any better? Who are we to forget the downtrodden or the oppressed or the marginalised while we go about chasing the dream? We see this imbalance and we go, man, that's not right, that's not fair. But all too often that's all we do. Because for us to do any more is actually going to cost us something. And if that's where it ends, perhaps then it's fair to say that when we ignore the prostituted child, that we actually lend our hand to their abuse. That when we ignore the widow and the orphan in their distress, that we actually add to their pain. When we ignore the slave who remains captive, that it's us who's entrapping them. That when we forget the refugee, that it's us who's displacing them. That when we choose not to help the poor and the needy, that we actually rob them. Perhaps the only fair thing to say is that when we forsake the lives of others, we actually forsake our own.
And the challenge is to move it to a second response. Talk about the first, a relationship. The first response to seeing that beauty inside of the relationship, seeing that you are a masterpiece, and that reflects an omniscient, omnipotent, and loving. It's a relationship. Oh, I didn't explain what happened when I tried to at least make right with that. Did everything make sense? Did I pass it away? No. Did I have more rejection emails? Yes. 2015, January 2015 yun, anong petsa na? So yes, there were a lot of stuff in between. But I guess the difference is that it's not a magic pill that solves everything outside of you. But at least it's a magic pill that changes inside you. Your perspective changes. Things begin to make sense. And now that I am here, and seeing that I've talked to my professor. I mean, sorry, for those who are not familiar, a PhD requires you to have a thesis advisor that you would work for the next 3 or 4 years. And you try to initially discuss some project and sorts. I realized that nakaintindi siya ng perspective ng taong gusto bumalik agad. Kasi he graduated from MIT and then he went back right away to Hong Kong. So, nagigets when he asked me, what's your plan? I want to go back to the Philippines. Sabi niya, okay, so don't do that. That will not work in the Philippines. I mean, you don't have, na-judge na, ba? There's no resources there. But you do this. Which makes more sense for me because that's exactly what I want to do. And when I asked him, for those who are not familiar again, publications is like the yardstick or the plumb of like you're doing well or you're not doing well. So I asked, like, so how many obligations should I have before I can grad? And what's your graduation requirement in terms of publication? Then he said, oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe that publication is the way to go. I think you must be ready to start your own lab when you go back. I have friends who have 10 papers, but the only thing they can do is that specific thing. Because they collaborate with everyone, they do that specific thing, and so you churn papers as if like an everyday thing na siya ginagawa. Kasi ulit-ulit ang ginagawa mo. But after your PhD, yes, you have a lot of papers, you know this much. But sabi niya, no, I want you to look, I want you to see the project from start to finish. Learn all the skills you need. And so when you go back, you have enough skill set to actually start something. And sabi ko, okay, with people telling me, kasi before I went there, people were telling me, lagot, Asian, ano yan, Asian advisor, ano yan, terror, Asian, typical hashtag Asian, Asian memes and all that. Kaya slave driver, ganyan, all that. Well, obviously he's Asian. But hindi to ba yung stereotypical Asian to how he actually takes how he deals with his advices. And so, kahit hindi ko favorite ang Hong Kong, like, oh my God, I want to go to a Chinese country. But I think, looking at it one step back, it makes sense. It's a gift of putting things together. You never see things from a future. I mean, we only get to reflect things pag tapos na. So you can connect the dots looking forward. You only connect the dots looking backward. See how all of these happen. And for me, may sense pala. May sense siya na because the dots were not just random. The dots were an effect of you saying, sige, give up. Ikaw ba na? And was it easy? No. You don't know how many times I always get envious of people leaving for PhD and I receive a rejection. It wasn't easy. Was it dramatic na one instant like gano'n na ako? Hindi. Until now, I still have those thoughts. Pati natanggap ako. Nag-apply pa nga ako nung natanggap ako eh. Nag-apply pa nga ako kung saan. Kasi mas gusto ko Europe pa din. Nag-apply ako sa UK. And then, ganun din, natanggap din ako. Student scholarship, like, who goes to London without scholarship? Like, unless I'm young. And then after that, then there's Brexit. Then all these myths in Europe. I'm not saying like don't go to Europe. I'm not saying if you go to Europe you're born for me. No, I'm just saying me being me, gala, kaladkarin, and all that. I wouldn't be surprised that I'll go to a place where there's a lot of people and who knows what would happen if I go. And so, depende kung paano ka nakikilala. At dahil nga inalay natin sa gumawa sa atin, yes, we're headed. And so, but the second response is co-creatorship. And this is a technical thing one for one. I'm sorry. But it rhymes with relationships, so it's cool things there. So, okay, tip making a PowerPoint. Look for fancy ways to put things together. So you sorry. But really, it just means that's simple. Like, if God can create things, if He can turn water to wine, He can make things happen. If He can make, something as bland as water to become wine, cool. And the brokenness outside, He can make it. But you might be too depressed naman if you just look at all these problems, or too cynical and too helpless. Learn helplessness. And here's where Friedrich Buchner comes in. Our favorite quote of the day. We always said, where God calls you is your deepest gladness meets the world's deepest grief. You're called for one thing. And if I have one advice, be exact and honest. Kasi kailangan, kasama yun sa, anong gagawin? This is intended for students. So the point is that you see the world around us, it's poverty, and that encompasses everything that poverty entails. Whether it's health, it's education, it's sexual abuse, it's whatever other forms of poverty you can think of. The goal is hopefully to use excellence to fight back. And you are in a place where you are trained to be excellent. And I hope you don't just wallow in your excellence. Like, yes, magaling ako sa ganito. Yes, magaling ako sa ganito. Go out there. Look around. There's a lot of work. And use it for something. Use it to at least make the world a little bit fair. And if you take Theo 141 with Bobby Kemp, one of his final orals is, paano mo sabihin sa tao sa kalye, mahal sila ng Diyos? Pag, yun yung tanong niya, like, paano mo sabihin sa mga nasalanta sa bagyo, mga na-abuse, na mahal sila ng Diyos? And when all these chasm breaks us down, and like, let us feel helpless. Probably we're there because we can make it a little bit fairer, a little bit more bearable. So look at you. Convince yourself you are special. Look up and you realize it's all grace. There's nothing you did to make it happen. There's nothing you did to make him an omniscient, omnipotent, and loving. And we respond in gratitude. We respond in gratitude by when we look around, we do something. We realize that there's much to do. There's a lot of work to do. And I did something that we do not know who wrote it. We just know it is ascribed to extraordinary. Forget who he is. You will meet him in day 141 anyway. And I like it because it gives us some grounding. That it says, we cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning. A step along the way. An opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. Ministers, not disciples. In the work that you do, I know you're doing a lot of meaningful work. I hope you don't get frustrated, helpless, and all that. And you don't see the end results. Because if you see it from this context, the fact that you are just doing what you can, is enough. Hindi naman natin hawak kung anong gusto natin gawin. Kung anong mangyari. We are workers, not master builders. Ministers, not disciples. So, knowing the fact that we are a masterpiece, go live like